everyone. Hello, and welcome to New America. Thank you so much for making it out tonight. My name is Mary Alice McCarthy, and I direct the Center on Education and Skills here at New America. So it's my tremendous pleasure to kick off tonight's discussion. And let me start by thanking all of you for coming. So thank you for making it out. I know it's a little bit of a drizzle out there, but I know also that you'll be glad that you did. And not just because of the excellent snacks behind you, but because we've got really a great series of conversations teed up for this evening. So we're here tonight to talk about a very interesting and important new book. I think you saw it out there in the front. And it's a book about sort of an old topic in some ways, vocational education. I should say that at least vocational education can sound old to American ears. But of course, vocational education and training is actually a very hot topic today around the world and right here in the United States. We call it career and technical education here, and it is very much at the forefront of federal and state policy agendas across the country. So why is that? I think there's a lot of reasons, and we're going to hear a lot about them tonight. But underneath all of that is the fact that I think we all know that in order to achieve sustained economic growth and shared prosperity, our communities are going to need to be able to build highly educated and skilled workforces. And here in the United States, over the past several decades, we have been very focused on increasing our high school graduation rates and expanding access to higher education. And we have been very successful at doing both of those things. But at the same time, we have neglected our career and technical education system, right? And I think people are really waking up these days to the fact that that is a big problem, and that to really be competitive in the global economy moving forward, we will need a world-class higher education system and a world-class vocational or career and technical education system, one that includes opportunities for work-based learning and apprenticeships, and that really involves industry in the design and development of curriculum. And that's what we're focused on here at the Center on Education and Skills at New America. In fact, we are leading a multi-stakeholder initiative to expand access to apprenticeships to high school students. It's called the Partnership to Advance Youth Apprenticeship. It includes 9 national partners, including some organizations with people that you're going to hear from today. And it's working in over 40 communities to stand up apprenticeship programs that start in high school, bridge into college, and give young people paid work experience and on-the-job training in a wide variety of industries, from healthcare to advanced manufacturing to software development. And as we have developed these programs and strategies, we have done our best to learn from other countries and borrow wherever we could. So of course, we were thrilled to hear, when we learned about the book, and very eager to engage with its editor and its contributing authors to help us think through what we can learn from other countries and how we might improve on their models with some of our uniquely American approaches to education and training. So that's the impetus for this evening's discussion. We're going to begin with a presentation by the book's editor, Marc Tucker. I'm sure many of you are already familiar with Marc. He has a long and distinguished career in the field of vocational education and skills policy. Marc is the President Emeritus and founder and a distinguished senior fellow at the National Center on Education and the Economy here in Washington, D.C. He has served in government as the Associate Director of the National Institute of Education and later as a presidential appointee to the National Skills Standards Board in the 1990s under President Clinton. He's also worked in philanthropy, founding the Carnegie Forum on Education and the Economy at the Carnegie Corporation of New York. He has been a visiting distinguished fellow at Harvard University's Graduate School of Education, and he has an extensive list of publications, many of which are being read by graduate students today as we speak, and including, but by no means limited to the book, to this most recent volume and the book that is out front. So after Marc's presentation, we will welcome my boss and New America Chief Executive Officer and really Chief Intellectual Officer, Dr. Anne Marie Slaughter, to the stage for a conversation with Marc about the book. Now, as a political scientist and former dean of the Woodrow Wilson School of Public and International Affairs at Princeton University, Anne Marie is no stranger to comparative analyses and their value for better understanding the strengths and weaknesses of our own systems here in the U.S. And as I'm sure many of you know, Anne Marie also served as the Director of Policy Planning for the U.S. State Department under Secretary Clinton. So again, intimately familiar with the value of understanding other countries and their critical challenges. And in her spare time, Anne-Marie also manages to write books on a wide variety of topics, from gender inequality to international relations to network theory. So I think Marc and Anne-Marie are going to have a fantastic conversation. I'm going to invite Marc up, but I am going to put in right before I do that one plug for if you'd like to follow this conversation on Twitter. We encourage you to do so, to tweet early and tweet often, and the hashtag is hashtag VETLessons. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Marc.
I really like that. Chief Intellectual Officer is not only a great title, it is in this case particularly apt. My heartfelt thanks to New America, to Anne-Marie and Mary Alice and her fabulous education team for three things. One is your interest in this book, which was a long time coming. Second was sponsoring this event. And third, and very importantly, for your leadership nationally on the apprentice issue. I don't care who you are, if you have a serious proposal for VET in the United States, it has got to be built on apprenticeship. And your decision to make that a keystone of your education program, I think, was a very, very important contribution of New America. Now, I'm going to try to figure out how to balance my machine in such a way that I can see the screen and it won't fall off the podium. Whoops. Okay. It's not doing anything. Why? No, I know that, but it's not changing the slides. Is there anyone who knows how to do that? It will not surprise any of you to learn that it did it perfectly about half an hour ago.
No, this is renowned for our emphasis on technology.
There you go.
I'm not in the technology part. We will be right with you.
I tell you what, I won't go away.
Okay. I think there should be a clicker that was on.
Yeah.
Well, there is a clicker.
Is there a clicker up there?
Nope. Well, I don't know. There is no clicker on top. I have no idea what's inside.
Maybe that, there you go. Try that.
Okay, we're going to try this.
Does that work?
We're going to find out. Nope. Now it'll work.
I can put that back here so it doesn't distract you.
Why do I wish I had their genius? The book is an international comparative study of vocational education and training in China, Singapore, Switzerland, and the United States. You may ask, by the way, why I decided to call this vocational education and training when in the United States it is called career education and training. And the answer is very simple. We have a long, illustrious, and foolish tradition in the United States of solving our education problems by changing the names of those problems. The rest of the world calls this vocational education and training. It's called vocational education and training there because it means something good. We changed the name in the United States because we all thought it was very low status. The only mistake we made was thinking we could change the status by changing the name. What the book is about is how you can change the status by changing vocational education and training. Okay, let's talk for a second about the United States. There is an enormous variety of vocational education and training in the United States. You can see a really good example of almost anything somewhere. The only thing you cannot see a good example of anywhere is a high-functioning system of vocational education. People come from all over the world to the United States to see our projects, our initiatives. They take the idea away and they build a system around it. That's the part we left out. What this book is about is how you build first-class systems of vocational education. You will find my view of vocational education in the United States rather, as the Scotch would say, a bit dour, or they might say dour. And that is because, as you will see, I don't think we have a vocational education system. I don't think that's an exaggerated statement, and I will explain why. Further, we have no other system for the bottom half of our students. We have almost nothing for them. We live in an age in which, according to the people who have the most expertise on the subject, robots and automated devices are likely to take the jobs of nearly half the people in our working population. Do you know which half that's going to be? It's the people in the bottom half of the distribution of the kids coming out of our high schools. The issue of whether we have a vocational education system worth having is actually an existential issue. If we don't solve it, we will have a very large proportion of our young adult population either without jobs or with jobs that pay next to nothing or are not full-time or all of the above. And there will be not much left, I believe, of the United States if that happens. So I think there's a lot at stake here. My purpose here in the next few minutes, and it will only be a few, is to give you a feeling for what I think it will take to develop a vet system as good as any in the world. Okay, here is a tiny potted history. It's a potted history of a potted history. If you go back 50 years, we go back to the 1970s, end of the 1960s, almost every economist in the world and almost every education policymaker or analyst agreed that the United States had the best educated workforce in the world. And there was a growing number of economists who believed that that fact by itself accounted for an enormous amount of our economic success and our political position in the world at large. Today, according to reanalysis by ETS of the most recent reports coming out from the OECD in Paris, the basic skills of the millennials in our workforce, when compared to the basic skills of the millennials in the workforces with which we compete, are either at the bottom of the distribution or tied for the bottom of the distribution. I put in capital letters down on the bottom of this slide what I take to be the central issue. It's actually really simple. Many of us, at least those with gray hair in this room, grew up in a world in which most competition for jobs was within the region in the state in which we lived. Today, labor at every single skill level is in an international, global labor market. It is a commodity. It is a commodity in a global labor market. What I want you to understand, to think about, is very simple. If you look at the people in the bottom half of our workforce from an education standpoint, the least skilled, they are among the highest people, they are among the highest cost people with those skills in the world. Global employers can go worldwide and get people with the same skills for anywhere between 1/100th and 1/1000th of what our people in the lower half of the distribution charge for their skills. That fact by itself ought to scare us to death. Okay, let me share some comments about the high school graduates entering the first year of community college. We have a lot of data on this. The typical high school graduates entering the first year of community college cannot comprehend the texts that they are given in their first year courses. Those texts are written according to our national English experts at the 12th grade level. I will remind you that is a high school level. The instructors told us in the research that we have done on this, which was supervised by a panel of first-class research scientists, The instructors told us they had to summarize the points in those textbooks in PowerPoint presentations so the kids could at least get the gist of what was in these 12th grade level textbooks. They can't do middle school math. I think all of you know that the kids coming out of high school have to take a test before they are placed. They're called placement tests. The majority of kids who take those placement tests are told by the community colleges that they don't have a mastery of mathematics sufficient to succeed in the first year math course. Those courses are called college math or they're called college algebra. They are the same course. Leading experts in mathematics in the United States told us that about 90% of the content of those courses is Algebra 1. That is a course in most states which is taught in middle school. What I've just told you is that these kids leave high school not ready for middle school math. We asked the people in this research study, the instructors, to send us examples of writing assignments they had given to these kids that they had graded, and we got very few back. Our research team called them to find out why. They said these kids can't write. We weren't hired to teach writing, and so we don't give them writing assignments. Our community colleges do provide, in fact, they are the principal providers of VET in the United States. The way they provide it is in units of, what shall I say, learning, called certificate courses. That's what they take. They take certificate courses. When our community colleges speak of giving kids a credential, they give them a certificate. That certificate basically says they have successfully concluded a 2 or 3 month preparation in the subject that they are supposed to be competent in. Hold that fact in your head, because I'm about to tell you how it compares to the other parts of the world. Okay, question. Does the United States have a VET program? That's where I want to begin. The United States government, that is to say the Department of Education, regards high school students who take 3 VET courses in a sequence as career and technical education concentrators. That is 3 courses over 4 years, okay? A few years back, the OECD was putting together a global report on VET among the member countries and others, and it had a chart of countries and what the proportion of students in each country was that were VET students. When they got to that, they told the US delegation they were not going to include the United States on that chart. Our delegation was aghast. They said, we have all of these VET students. These were the concentrators. And the people of the OECD said, according to our definition of vocational education, they are not vocational education students. Vocational education students take years, not months, of vocational education training, and it is set to a very high standard. That's not what you guys do. We aren't going to put it on the chart. When we used that OECD criterion, when we looked at what was going on in Maryland, we concluded that fewer than 5%, probably 2%, of the kids in Maryland, which has, by the way, one of the most admired VET systems in the United States, were vocational education students by the OECD standard. The last point on this slide was the one I started with. So contrast what I just said with what we find in Singapore and Switzerland. Instead of 1%, 2%, or 3% in a serious vocational education program, in those countries you've got on the order of 60 to 70% in VET programs. Instead of being regarded as what you do if you cannot do academics, and therefore the lowest possible stream that you can be put in, it's only open to students who can do academics, as those countries set that standard. The result of all of this is that VET has a much higher status there than in the United States, in those countries. It's not, by the way, because they changed the name. They didn't decide to call it career and technical education. They actually changed the status by changing the offering and opening up a world to these students of opportunities that students who can't read, can't do math, and can't write anything will never have. In Singapore, it's the kids in the bottom quarter who go into their Institute for Technology Education. We said, oh my God, they stream students. Really? We discovered that the students in their bottom quarter are performing at an academic level well above the median for all American students. They just set the standard way up here. Our expectations for these kids is down here. Poor kids, they can't do it. That's not what they say. They say they can do it. And they set up a system to do it. They set up a system to do it. Their vocational education programs are not a few months. They're full-time for 3 to 5 years. They are coordinated work and theory. More than half is work experience, but it's not work experience. It's very highly structured training with state-of-the-art equipment, highly trained instructors. The credentials are set to a very high level. I mean, hey, look, you're comparing a credential that assumes that you've studied something for 3 months to a credential that assumes that you've studied it for 3 to 5 years with a very high level of technical contents. So they have credentials that mean something. The standards for those credentials are put together by the employers. So there's little doubt, but what if you earn the credential, you'll get the job. Of course you will, because you've met the standards that the employers have set. The most prestigious employers in Singapore and Switzerland can't wait to get their hands on these kids because the whole system is knit together. In the United States, what we do in vocational education in our high schools is only loosely connected to what's going on in the community colleges. They're really mostly on different planets. JFF and others have worked hard to see if they can get some of what's going on in the community college to start going on in the high school and giving high school kids access to the community college program. But what you see in these other countries is much more than that. You see a program of training in VET that is 3 to 5 years long. It begins in high school and continues in the next institution, and it's knit together like this, right? It's really all one program. So the question is, what should we be doing that we're not doing? I have 2 minutes. Make admission to high school VET contingent on reading at the 11th grade level. Right now it's the 7th or 8th grade level, by the way. Proficiency in Algebra 1, that's a middle school course, and writing reasonably fluently. Make high school VET the front end of community college VET in one integrated sequence curriculum. Redesign the high school community college VET program to terminate in a sequence of credentials set to standards comparable to their equivalents in Switzerland and Singapore. Make the credentials awarded at the end of community college program the qualifying credential for admission to state polytechnics and applied universities. That's what they're doing in these other countries. So you've got a system that begins in high school, moves smoothly to a post-secondary program that is tightly knit to it, leads directly to a polytechnic I'm losing my mind again, of course. Structured, a science university, that's what I'm trying to say. It's called a polytechnic in Singapore, and it's called something else in Switzerland. It's the same institution. What it is an institution that takes you from a journeyman's level, in effect, using the Germans' way to talk about this, up into the theoretical realm to the point where you can get what amounts to a master's degree in a highly technical subject. And many of those people, by the way, actually go on for further study in postgraduate programs in major universities. The point is that you have a stream which is not a dead-end program for kids who can't do academics. It is easy for parents in those countries to imagine their kids starting out in vocational education and winding up running the corporation. If you want to change the status of vocational education, that's what you have to do. You have to create a governance system for VET that is largely controlled by business and by government agencies responsible for economic development. In the United States, the educators have succeeded year after year, time after time, in controlling VET, and it's not going to work. You have to charge government with involving employers in the development of state-of-the-art skill standard systems. This is a very intricate task. It is easy to set up a skill standard system that will actually rigidify an economy. Germany is not bad at doing that. It is much harder to set up a skill standard system which will drive an economy forward, because you cannot take average industry practice and set your standards to it. You have to take state-of-the-art practice and set your standards to it. If you do that, you can drive the entire economy forward. It's tough to do, and it will only work, as the experience of both Singapore and Switzerland shows, if you have either an oligarchy in business that is determined to be state-of-the-art, which is the case in Switzerland, by the way, or as in Singapore, where you have a government agency that is willing to listen to business but has an idea about how to make Singapore even more competitive tomorrow than it was yesterday. Those things are absolutely essential. My last slide. I hear it said that one can't compare the United States with places like Singapore that are so much wealthier and less diverse than some US states. This is 130% hogwash. In 1960, when the Malay Federation kicked Singapore out of the Federation and the British pulled out of the only naval yard they had there and the jobs went away, you could put all the people with a bachelor's degree in Singapore in a room half this size. Singapore was a confederation of people who spoke different languages from different countries, who hated each other and fought with weapons in the streets every day. Lee Kuan Yew had an incredible challenge to build a people, a country, out of that, out of nothing. Most of the people in Singapore were illiterate. Today, it is one of the most advanced societies in the world and has arguably the best education system that has ever been built. If they can do that in 50 years, why on earth can we not build a first-class system when we actually had one 50 years ago, which we've now lost? Okay? Let's go for it.